Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. And what's another week of down to the wire dramatic college football? I almost feel like we should turn this into the App State Panic Room at this point with the month that they're having.
Okay, I have a confession.
Yeah.
I was watching that game like off and on. There are a million different games on at the same time. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
like flipping back and forth the ESPN Plus when I can. I see them get stopped on like fourth and goal, basically with like a minute left.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, based on what I've seen from after that point, I'm like, this is over. So
Yeah.
I changed the channel. I did see they had like a 99.1 win percentage. Troy did. So I'm sitting there like, it's over. Like, that's it. And then I changed to another game only to
Hmm.
suddenly see like people tweeting about this insane. And I'm like, what? I missed it. I missed the end. I'm so ashamed of myself.
Well, the beauty of watching football in 2022 is that it doesn't take long for the highlight to show up on social media, and you can watch the madness at the end. Hopefully, everybody's safe because there was a
Yeah.
field storming after that game, and I know there were some reports of injuries. So hopefully everybody's leaving Boone, and I hope there's also like enough beer over the last 3 weekends in Boone. They got to keep up with the supply, what's going on. So okay, here's the thing: the reason why I started with App State and Troy and the way that game ended is to illustrate a larger point that we're seeing out of college football so far this season. And I know that college football you derive sick enjoyment out of some of these close games or bonkers games. Shout out to the whole sickos football sickos committee thing that has popped up over the last couple of
Yes, I'm
years.
one of them. I know.
You're the one who absolutely loves a 0-0 end of regulation between Wake Forest and Virginia Tech with Frank Beamer's arms up in the air. So you appreciate this type of thing. And the reason why I bring this up is that as I'm watching NC State methodically, not perfectly, but methodically take Texas Tech out, and as this game is starting to go final, it's 27-14. You're not
Wait,
getting
does that mean
perfect.
Texas Tech decided to use their timeouts?
Yeah,
Because they let like 4 minutes go
they
by,
did. They
and when
did.
they didn't,
They
and then
did.
they put in their backup quarterback inexplicably. I'm so
So
confused by the whole late game strategy by Texas Tech, but whatever.
I get that we live in the moment, but everybody's living in the moment right now, right? North Carolina was living in the moment against App State and even against Georgia State there for a little bit last week, and who knows what we're going to get next week when North Carolina and Notre Dame play.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Yeah.
That I'm also intrigued by the NC State Clemson game too, because these are two offenses, both the Tigers and the Wolfpack, that are not exactly firing on all cylinders, but the defenses respectively are. I brought up 0-0. I mean, we could get some 0-0 magic for all I know between NC State and Clemson. Regardless, I get off track. I get that there is a collective, like, what the hell with NC State's offense. But I'm here to tell you that NC State's offense is kind of like I don't see that much difference. Is there a drop in skill from last year? Yes, if they can clean up some mistakes like what we
Yeah.
saw with Demi Sumo Karmbe.
Yeah,
Uh,
he got them the win though, so I don't want to hear y'all complaining about him anymore. Leave him alone.
right. So there's the fumble, but clearly Tim Beck recognizes, all right, well, we're going to get you, we're going to get you back in this, and they made the Thayer Thomas thing work again, and getting him and getting Sumo Karmbe the touchdown. So I'm almost like NC State's offense kind of is there and it's doing what it needs to do, and 3-0 is 3-0, man.
Yeah, except for the fact that, like, I think what you saw a lot of this game was just some of the peril of, like, the approach that they've sort of always taken under Dave Doran, right? Which
Hmm.
is the let's methodically go down the field. Okay, but if your offensive line gets a penalty, then you're back, you're set back. If a play gets
Right.
busted up, then you're set back, and it's hard to maintain drives that way. You've got to have people that don't make mistakes like ever. And
Hmm.
that's a lot to ask, I think, of college football players, especially, you got some new guys on the O line, you got some new wide receivers, you got new running backs. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's a lot to ask. And so I get it. I get the angst because I'm sitting there watching them and I'm like, okay, are we still doing this? Like, why
Yeah.
does this offense still look this way? It's still a puzzler to me. Like, maybe they're saving it all for Clemson. Who knows? And they
Could
did
be.
take it, to be fair, they did take a few more downfield shots today. Leary wasn't able to connect on
Yeah.
a couple that would have been touchdowns, but you know, it is still just puzzling. And like we've talked about, you can't, well, you can, but it's not fair to hype up your deservedly like Heisman potentially winning quarterback and Devin Leary and then play like this offensively. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
By the way, the game is now final, and I think we avoided a bad beat. 27-14 is I think 10.5 was the spread, and Texas Tech almost scored a late touchdown to potentially make a bad beat there. Now, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to like positive vibes only this,
No,
right?
I get it though.
Like
3 and
I
0 is
get
3 and 0. Like you take
and
it.
I
It
get,
is
and
what it is.
it's not even so much the 3-0 aspect of it. It's more along the lines of like, I know what State's doing and I understand why it's maddening, but they seem to believe that this is the thing that's going to make it work. Like it's not lost on me that we're all talking about NC State putting the game away if that 9-minute drive actually results in a touchdown and not a fumble out the end zone. And I can spend the next 10 minutes talking about how that touchback rule on a fumble into the end zone is one of the dumbest rules in college football. But I don't have time for that right now. It's almost too punitive for what happened in that
Yeah.
situation, but that's neither here nor there. My point is, they ate so much time, they would have scored a touchdown. That game is effectively over by the end of the third quarter. The fumble happens, to your point. The mistake happens, and it really puts the defense back in a spot that more pressure on them. But as I joked on Twitter, I mean, they were certainly well rested. They had about 9 minutes off the field, and sure
True.
enough, they held it down.
But the Thayer Thomas, the trick play was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I just
Right.
want to see more of that from them. And I know they tried a little more this game, so that's good to see. But
Hmm.
you can't, like, it's so easy to go 3 and out with the approach that they have. It really is. And it's not only asking Leary to do too much, I think it's also asking your defense to do too much because
Sure.
way too often, especially early, you just keep putting them back on the field. And yeah, they did hold the ball for 9 minutes. That's their approach, and that was ultimately a good thing. But at the same
Mm.
time, like I get why it's frustrating because it is for me too. Because you're just like, I know you can score more. I know you can do it.
By the way, they got UConn coming up next. I'm telling you right now, you're going to see more of the same when it comes to just doing what they need to do to get out of there with a win. And Aaron,
Wait, say
amazing.
that's UConn next? Okay.
Yeah, UConn's next.
Oh boy, that's a
Yeah,
sickos football game.
most definitely sickos football. Then they got the Clemson game. Wake Forest is the team that's going to be taking on Clemson next. Wake Forest out here with, again, gets back to my original point. There's some crazy results of walking out with older teams, and that's the other aspect about this year too. There's so many older teams out there that they're going to be a little bit more competitive than we initially thought. Failed 2-point conversion ends up saving the day for Wake Forest, who trailed for a good bit there. And you had mentioned this to me, where Sam Hartman looked great last week, a little off this week. They're going to need him. They're going to need him on next week against Clemson because that defense for Clemson it continues to look great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen some discussion on Wake Twitter about Sam where some people are like, look, we love him, but there are moments where they really need him to come through and he gets a little shaky, gets a little turnovery. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a fair critique of him. And I think, we saw it against North Carolina. I don't know, it was 2 years ago, right? In that shootout game, or, where he was playing so brilliantly. And then all of a sudden, like late in the game, he just starts turning it over a bunch.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
Yep.
where is this coming from? And I think like it's a lot to ask of Sam, but at the same time, I also think like maybe there's just some tendency to tell Wake fans to just be thankful for what you have in this quarterback that's doing X, Y, and Z. And I think there's some pushback from some Wake fans that are like, well, wait, we can still like critique him because he almost lost them the game today. Like they were up 20-5, which was beautiful. 20-8 at halftime. Like, you can't have mistakes like that. So I get it. And it'll be interesting to see for sure, because if there's any year Wake can pull this off, you would think it'd be this one.
Yeah, no, they are just as much a contender in the Atlantic Division as NC State and Clemson, and that's why this upcoming Saturday is going to be fascinating between the Deacons and the Tigers. Which I saw that they announced that Truist Field is going to be sold out again for Wake Forest. Speaking of fast starts and quarterback play, Riley Leonard continues to really look. I mean, Duke's back to being fun, right?
Okay.
Duke under Mike Elko's back to being fun. I know it's NCAA, but they're following this pattern that they're going out. They haven't trailed yet this year. It's been a fun turnaround for the Blue Devils.
Duke football 3-0. Kansas
Yeah.
football 3-0. Duke at Kansas next weekend. Let's get this trending. KU football is already on board with this. They're already
Yes.
encouraging the powers. Y'all don't need to go back to Ohio State for game day. Why you want to go to A&M? Don't go
Who's the
there.
who's the guest picker for that one?
See, that's been the thing. Like people were saying Coach K. I'm like, there's a 0.0% chance Coach K. I'm like, I don't even think he does that in Durham for game
No,
day if it went there, much less in Lawrence,
absolutely
Kansas.
not.
He's not
Absolutely not.
doing that. I got some interesting choices. Like Bill Self's probably who they end up going with, right? But like Paul
Hmm.
Rudd, you know, that'd be
That'd be a good
good.
one. That'd be a good one.
Someone told me Elvira is from Kansas, and it is
Huh.
almost spooky season. So that might be an interesting one. Like, let's make the college game day that's already absurd, like a little more absurd. Turn it up. We need like Lee Corso and Elvira over the back and forth. I'm just
It's
saying.
got to be. It's got to be Roy. It's got to be Roy
That was
Williams.
my favorite suggestion
It's got to
too,
be
was
Roy Williams
Roy. Now Roy
because
would
Roy.
never do that.
Why wouldn't he? It's Duke. He would absolutely troll Duke. Maybe
Because he
actually,
is
I tell you, you know
retired
what?
now.
You're right. You know what? Duke wouldn't be it. If NC State was going to Kansas and that was the game day,
He'd
then
consider it.
Roy. I think Roy would do that one.
I just don't think like I know he like if Mac asked him to do it in Chapel Hill for them, I think he would do it. Do I
Hmm.
think he's going to Lawrence, Kansas for a Duke
No,
Kansas match? No.
no,
Like, would it
no.
be hilarious though? Yes. Would I love to see it? Yes. But no.
Well, what I would love if Carolina was hosting game day, I would love Luke Combs to do it while he's wearing UNC stuff, like he did at the Final Four. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
I just have like I have so many. We could do a whole separate panic room on what I feel is like the classism inherent in like some people judging fandom, but I'm
I
just
know
not going to go into all of that tonight.
you can actually.
I
Why don't you
think
come
y'all
back to
would
the?
gladly accept those fans if they did that for your team,
Of
but you
course
don't
they
like
would.
it because they do it for, a team you don't like, which I
Exactly.
understand. I make
Exactly. No, that's
Steelers jokes
exactly
all the time. I get it.
it. Fair enough. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We'll check in with y'all later in the week.